Order out of chaos, matter out of void, warmth from cold, and life from death. This was the duty of the Elohim at the dawn of creation, ordained to them by the great architect. 7 houses were made, each ruled over by an autarch who interpreted the will of the Creator, and in turn related these wishes to the angels below them in the great hierarchy. It was perfect in every way, each a small but invaluable cog in the great machinery, and there was no need for promotion or demotion. Each angel had their place in the great act of creation. The 7 houses were the Namaru, the Asharu, the Anunnaki, the Neberu, the Lamasu, the Rabizu, and the Halaku. Each member of these houses knew their place and desired nothing but to do what had been asked of them. And so it continued for countless ages, until that fateful debate, that moment when doubt first took root in the hearts of some of the angels. Tonight, the demons who have fled the abyss no longer use these names, but it is not by their own choice, of course. No, Archangel Michael, after having confronted Lucifer and his host of rebels about their treachery, named them thus under order of their Creator.
Rebels of the second world, your punishment is a new responsibility, for now your realm shall grow unchecked. I name you Halaku the Slayers, and your toil shall never cease. Your fate is to weep in exhaustion, for the coming war will reap a harvest of needless death. Fields shall burn before the harvest, and animals die before they bear their young. But worst of all is your newest duty, reaping those you love. Know this, by your uprising, you have opened your kingdom to mankind. Rebels of the Wild House, you have abused your power for your own ends, instead of trusting nature's course. As punishment, your one-time servants shall multiply unchecked, overrunning your control and outstripping your authority. I name you Rabizu the Devourers, and you shall live to see the teeth of servant beasts stripping the flesh from human bones. By your uprising, you have cost mankind their place as first among nature's creatures. Henceforth beasts shall see them merely as beasts like themselves, to feed upon or flee. Rebels of the deeps, you have sought to stretch humanity's mind so that it might encompass a multitude of possibilities. Know that you have worked better than you knew, for their knowledge shall grow beyond even your imagination. It will grow until their inner worlds eclipse their outer, until each is an island within his own thought. It will grow until the leaf of truth is lost in the forest of lies. I name you Lamasu the Defilers, and condemn you to watch as the truth you sought to glorify is tarnished and concealed. Rebels of the Fates, you have taught mankind to look to the future. Now know that they will ignore the past, and the present too. You sought to show them how much they can accomplish. Instead, they will see how much they leave undone. I name you Neberu the Fiends, and at your feet lay this crime, that you have robbed humanity of contentment, giving in its place endless vistas of longing, envy, and greed. Rebels of the Fundament, you sought to give man dominion over matter. Know that your ambition is forever spoiled. Man's knowledge and skill are fated to increase, but his reach will ever exceed his grasp. Continually seeking more power over the material world, his blind fumbling shall unleash greater devastation than unchecked nature ever could. I name you Anunnaki the Malefactors, and the tools you give to man are doomed to turn in his hands and harm him. Rebels of the Firmament, I name you Asharu the Scourges, and share with you this curse. All men are fated to die, all without exception. Even those who escape malice and malady and mischance shall come to the Slayers in the end. Humanity is now gripped by age, and as they grow, so shall they decay, becoming infirm of mind and frail of body, until even the strongest grow weak, and even the wisest grow feeble. You can continue to guard if you wish. Indeed, I'm sure you shall, but do so knowing that all your efforts are ultimately futile. Rebels of the Dawn, I name you Namaru, the Devils.
These proclamations were not just words, they were the law. Reality was altered that day and would remain so, and even with no angels or even a maker present to enforce it, no demons refer to themselves by their old names. It is simply not who they are anymore. The Defilers, once known as the Lamassu, were always angels of the passions, of art, and of insight. Yet as time went by and their natures were twisted, they became obsessed with earthly pleasures, shallow luxuries, and vanity. Upon their escape from hell, they now seek to possess those mortals who have these same fascinations. While they tend to go for those mortals who may have sought to fill the void in their souls with possessions and meaningless affairs, some of them are also drawn to those souls who wish to change the world, and try to do so as well. The ones who roll up their sleeves and struggle against the tide of apathy glow brightly in their eyes, and artists who try to capture reality in their works are likewise attractive. The devils, who once were led by Lucifer himself, their autarch, were not cursed by God like the others. They were once the first house, and by ignoring them, they were punished badly enough, and even to this day they seek desperately to regain the influence and control they once wielded. Mortals who have lost their scruples and morals on the path to power tend to be the ideal objects of possession. Those who see others as stepping stones to further their own career are likewise ideal subjects, and those rare few mortals who stand up against overwhelming odds shine like beacons to their eyes, their heroism reminding these former Namaru of their past. They surround themselves with mortals attracted to power, and they form cults of personalities around themselves in what can best be described as pyramid schemes. The mighty Devourers were reluctant to join the rebellion, but those who did never swayed from their path. While they tend to be drawn to mortals jaded by lives of violence and horrors, they can likewise be found possessing the husks of firefighters, activists, and salespersons, people whose spark have burnt out as they struggle against overwhelming odds and were scarred by the process. Those mortals who care for the environment, whether in a good or bad sense, are also attractive. A devourer may possess an eco-terrorist just as likely as a poacher. Some see it as their calling to protect the wild, whilst others instead are content with the age-old belief of survival of the fittest, caring little for balance anymore. The Fiends are still seers and prophets, and even to this night they are tormented by how short-sighted their wards, humanity, are. So few see beyond their immediate line of sight, and so many dwell on choices made, or not, without moving on. To the Fiends, nothing is more attractive than those who sacrifice body and soul in pursuit of something grander than themselves, of a truth more important than their lives. Journalists who risk the enmity of foes hundredfolds more powerful than themselves, or occultists who invite spirits into their bodies in exchange for knowledge, are all tempting prey. Fiends also enjoy learning secrets, and thus they often prove the perfect listeners to those who wish to unburden themselves. And many fiends harvest faith by carefully guiding these souls along their path, or showing those mortals who seek quick answers just how grim their futures may really be. The former Anunnaki, the malefactors, were the angels of earth and the fundament. Being separated from their purpose, the Anunnaki likewise are separated from others. They are often lonely and insecure, lost without a purpose, and likewise seek out mortals who similarly lack reason to exist. Drug addicts, teenagers trying desperately to fit into a clique, or those who cling to their abusive spouses are all good examples of the kind of people that the malefactors would seek to possess. Of course, those who are distant from the rest of humanity, and prefer the company of things, are likewise attractive subjects of possession, for their disdain of humanity mirrors their own. The scourges were created to protect creation, yet time and age will claim even the most securely guarded. They are often drawn to fear, only to find themselves possessing the body of someone selfishly fearing for the loss of what they do not deserve, or the fear of retribution from their own poor choices. Fear, ultimately, is what their hosts all have in common. The scourges have the power to heal and to harm, and thus often find it easy to gather followers to harvest faith from. After all, they can cure the incurable, and this alone will gather many who may have lost their hope in the face of hopelessness. Some scourges see things in a different light, and instead struggle to find sympathy with creatures they know will inevitably die, and thus they easily slip into careless reaping instead. The Slayers, the last house, the Angels of Death, are drawn to those who have little regard for their own lives, and many of them end up possessing suicide victims. Others, however, are those who have either seen, suffered, or inflicted violence and death to the point where it is destroying their souls. Refugees, addicts, soldiers, and victims of torture are all possible candidates. Rarer, but still viable, are those who have given everything to helping others without thought of recompense. Such selflessness shines brightly to the Slayers. As it was never humanity's fate to die, these angels are constantly reminded of the consequences of their rebellion. After their return to Earth, many of the fallen Elohim have banded together for a sense of purpose and community. Reminiscent of the houses before their rebellion, and the legions before their banishment, these factions represent not just community, but also perspective and philosophy. These factions are the Faustians, the Cryptics, the Luciferians, the Raveners, and the Reconcilers. Some have radically different worldviews, and thus may find themselves in conflict with one another over how best to deal with their new situation. The Faustians desire to regain control over humanity, believing that they must pick up the mantle and rule over these misguided creatures as heaven no longer does. Their purpose is not altogether altruistic, of course, as they believe that only they know the best for humanity, and that eventually their wards' faith in their masters will help sustain them on this planet indefinitely. The Cryptics are instead motivated to finding out why things have become as they are. They seek an answer to why the Creator abandoned their creation, and why things have spiraled the way it has, and likewise why have they returned. They seek to catalog all the fallen on Earth, hoping to devise some answer out of this knowledge. The Luciferians are some of the most tightly organized of the fallen, as they seek to hold the torch for Lucifer, their leader, until he is found once more. They consider their rebellion unfinished, and thus prepare themselves for war against the heavenly host, and they cling to their faith in that they were right still, rejecting the hopelessness of the abyss. The Raveners, on the other hand, hold nothing but contempt for creation. They see their own failure, humanity's failure, and even the Creator's failure as inevitable, and thus argue for it all to be destroyed, whether to remake it anew, or to draw out the Creator from their hiding, or even as an act of mercy upon the wretches inhabiting it. Of course, some simply want to see it burn. And finally, the Reconcilers are those who wish to leave the rebellion and their hatred behind. Some consider their acts wrong and that they were justly punished, while others instead see their causes lost and wish to move on. Some even think that by doing good deeds, they may earn the forgiveness of their Maker, and thus seek to bring some light and hope to a world bereft of it. Naturally, not every fallen Elohim is a member of these factions, but eventually they will find themselves swept up in their politics, whether or not they want to be. The three grandchildren of Cain wait patiently for the time of judgment to arise. Bambi Parsons, a leader with an unbreakable will, Procyon, reborn as a god amongst Cain's angels, and Dugal, whose thirst for blood is matched only by his strength of will and purpose. Their children, the Methuselah, control our every move through their timeless jihad. They are Her Satanic Majesty Dani, whose mere presence chills the heart, Maximilian S. Hardcastle, a tutor and master of the jihad, Socrates Johnson, a masterful craftsman of stories, Lauren Eason, a trustworthy ally and friend, Alexander Canehurst, inquisitive explorer and steward of the Canehursts, and Snow, who oversees the progress of the council patiently from the shadows. On the council of the Primogen are seated Edward Reed, 06, Ian Nichols, the Black Friar, Brandon Hunter Hayden, the Autumn Alchemist, and Michelle Light, wise leaders and of good judgment. This week the council will wish to thank the elder June Pocholo for her continued support. We deeply appreciate your wise counsel. We would also wish to thank the Ancile Remy Van Roy, who has remained a staunch supporter through times of peace and times of trouble. Naturally, all our elders, Ancile, and neonates receive our gratitude from the bottoms of our hearts. Without your support, this would not be possible. And thank you for watching. And I looked, and behold a pale horse, and his name that sat on him was Death, and hell followed with him.